As a Black writer and as a student of African American history and literature, I think that James Baldwin is the GOAT.
James Baldwin is one of the dearest writers to my heart, a hero.
James Baldwin means legacy to me.
The issues that his texts take on are sadly still incredibly relevant today.
He is America's Black revolutionary voice.
He holds up a mirror to what we don't want to look at. His gaze is unflinching.
He's one of the greatest writers in the world, not just American, not just African American, but in the world.
My work would not be what it is without his tremendous, tremendous example.
Hi, I'm Professor Emily Raboteau from the City College of New York, located in Harlem. On behalf of our college's James Baldwin Centennial Celebration, I wish to invite you to a symposium we're having on campus on Thursday, December 5th. Our hometown giant, James Baldwin, would have been 100 years old this year. Let's celebrate his lasting influence. The symposium is free and open to the public. It will include live music, soul food, conversation with people who knew Baldwin, performances, a special screening, and panels of scholars and writers influenced by his work. That's December 5th from 10:30 to 4 o'clock in the ballroom of the North Academic Campus building, located on Amsterdam Avenue at 137th Street. We hope to see you there. I'm here with two of my very special and dear colleagues, Professor William Gibbons and Mr. Herb Boyd. As well as being a journalist for the Amsterdam News, you are the author of a biography, Baldwin's Harlem, which is full of rich anecdotes about how growing up in Harlem influenced writer James Baldwin.
Sure.
Would you care to share a little bit about Baldwin in Harlem?
Oh, yes. Well, the thing about it is that recounting his career, August the 2nd, 1924, Harlem Hospital. I think later on we're going to be doing a tour of that, right, William? you begin there in the Hollows and Park Avenue in the 130s. That's where the family lived. But they bounced around that territory. And, of course, the first school he went to was PS 124. And then after that, PS 139, and eventually out to DeWitt Clinton High School. In all of that, you begin to get a feel for his literary development at the same time, because he started writing as a very young person. He's already began to kind of define the environment that he lived in. And you talk about he's 10 years of age when the Depression hits. So he's seeing all of these demonstrations, the food lines and everything, and that begins to shape his outlook, his perspective on life. And you can see that evolve and emerge in all of his writing, particularly the nonfiction stuff. And later on with Go Tell It on the Mountain, which of course is one of my favorite fictional books, to say nothing of the coming together of all the stuff. And one day when I was lost, a film thing that was never really taken in as the adaptation of the work on Malcolm X, as well as The Devil Finds Work. This is a collection. He was a film buff, you know, and he talks about that, and even Betty Davis comes up, you know, in terms of the eyes, you know, boom, boom, boom. And he began to feel less concerned about people, you know, antagonizing him about his eyes and everything. Look, that's Betty Davis. She's got eyes just like you. So all of this begins to bring him into perspective. And of course, his essays is how he's really introduced and doing book reviews and stuff like that for a number of leftist publications. That was his kind of literary introduction. But later on, we're going to see how that takes shape in a series of very important novels that he wrote, all the way from Another Country, all the way down, you know, to, hey, Go Tell It on the Mountain. That's my favorite.
One of my favorites too.
Sure.
And those eyes, I don't remember who said it, but described them as world-absorbing eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, and they were. Professor Gibbons, as well as being a librarian at the City College of New York and a Harlemite, you will be leading a Baldwin-themed tour of Harlem on December 6th as part of our centennial celebration.
The community walk will take place the day after the symposium. And we'll start at the Harlem branch of the New York Public Library. And that's a sacred place. And we'll walk from there around the corner to Fifth Avenue to the past Harlem Hospital where he was born, and we'll end the tour at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. In between those spots, we'll hit the Hollows, right, where he moved around. But I'm excited to take folks to Langston Hughes' home and perhaps go inside and think about Baldwin at the age of 10, 9, 8, and perhaps having access to Hughes, but not having access to Hughes. And Hughes was a man of the community. He was excited because Hughes traveled. And when he finally bought that home in Harlem, he felt that he could be a person, a part of the community. And so thinking about Baldwin living in that neighborhood, blocks from him, and to absorb the experiences from Hughes would be fantastic to talk about. I'm also excited to go into Harlem Hospital and see those beautiful murals. I don't know if we'll get the opportunity to go into the nursery ward, but we will see the WPA murals. So I'm excited. I'm excited to take folks on a nice tour of Harlem and experience and take a journey that influenced Baldwin.
And you worked at the 124th Street Library as a librarian. Am I remembering correctly that Baldwin, as a young person, read almost everything in that library?
Yes, that was his sanctuary, right? Good writers are good readers. And he spent many times in that branch library. That library is located across from Marcus Garvey Park. 30 years ago, I worked in that park. 30 years ago, I went into that library and asked the head librarian and told the head librarian that I want to write and I need a job that was going to allow me the time to write. And he said, become a librarian. That was 30 years ago. So for me, that place is special. It is a Carnegie branch. It's a beautiful space. I'm blessed to have got my career and started in the place where Baldwin as a sanctuary.
Thanks for talking about that legacy with us. There have been many centenary celebrations of Baldwin this year, including ours, not just in New York City, but across the nation and indeed all over the world. Just this shows his footprint, his global footprint and reach. Why do you think he remains so culturally relevant today?
I think one of the things that keeps his so relevant, and his legacy that resonates almost on a daily basis, you find someone quoting James Baldwin. One of the things about James Baldwin, I think, that keeps him current is that he had this feeling for past his prologue. You know, some of the stuff we're going through right now, this whole existential, what you call this pivotal moment in our history with the election coming up. Well, he had a similar kind of experience back in the 1960s. We talk about 1963 to 1968. 1963, when he's involved in the March on Washington. And I think one of the things about is that he was an individual who had an inexhaustible reservoir of courage and commitment and unimpeachable integrity. All of those things, you know, make him important for people who are trying to get a grip on reality in this country, so infused with racism and white supremacy. So here is Baldwin as a kind of a prophetic voice, and that's always going to resonate with the African-American community. He brought the church into play. He brought the music into play. He helped the whole literary tradition came into play through this one individual. So he had ways kind of reaching out to desperate aspects of the community and individuals with their aspirations. I think one of the things that his art and politics came together pretty much in the tradition of a Paul Robeson. When you have all those ingredients thrown out there, you can pick and choose what you want to have because he has something there for all of us. But I think the past and prologue thing is very interesting because here we're struggling now with trying to hold on to democracy is threatened. It was threatened at the time when he was writing. The whole period of civil rights struggle, he got involved. Rarely do we have a writer in this country that insinuate themselves so deeply in any kind of political movement. And he was there, unflinchably there. So I think those are the kind of elements that began to attract activists to him. His writing alone is just so full of the kind of lyricism, the prose, and also the insight that he provided readers. You have to do a deep look into his book. You'll miss a lot of things. You have to read between the lines, which I had the great opportunity to do in so many different ways. And that you talk about the versatility that he expressed. There'd be something there for you. And for me, I think one of the things that grabbed me more than anything was his understanding of where we were as a black people in this country. He was a symphonic voice for that. And I think the unimpeachable integrity is something that is kind of a wellspring of all that he represented. So he had a futuristic outlook, so he's always going to be current.
The politics, the themes, the soulfulness, and as you mentioned, the style.
Style, no doubt about it. He had a very interesting and peculiar style because he wrote with such intricacy that so you think you have grabbed on what he was talking about. You have to go back and read it again. And on many, many occasions, I had to go back and reread and I understood exactly what he was saying because his metaphors, the antiphony of his writing was sometimes very complicated. But at the same time, if you break it down, it was simply saying some things about our reality in this country. That's some of the stuff I tried to capture, in the biography, because when the agent approached me, Herb, we want you to do a book on Baldwin. I say, look here, there's at least 4 or 5 very, very definitive biographies. What can I do? He says, well, maybe you can find something, think about it. So I thought about it for a while, and then I said, well, what about Baldwin in Harlem? Because all of the books, the biographies on him, kind of touched on those things, but they sped along. Because I slowed it down. Let's just go in, and particularly as a young person. So essentially, the book is about his connection to that community, and of course, it haunted him in one way. You kind of have a distance from it in another, but it was always there in some form or shape.
You'll be having a keynote conversation at our symposium on December 5th with poet Quincy Troupe and James Baldwin's nephew, Trevor. What are you looking forward to talking about with those two?
Heaven only knows. It's kind of an organic situation. You'll be improvising, and I think a lot of surprises will come out of that, because I don't think it'll be a rehearsal at all on this.
No.
So it'd be spontaneous. And also with spontaneity, always come up with this like, what? That's incredible. I'll leave that discussion because I have a very, very few pregnant questions to throw out there to them and see how they react to that. At the same time, I'll try to play right into their bailiwicks, not have them take them out of their comfort zones. With Quincy Troupe, Quincy is, I quote him extensively in my book, the last interview. He conducted one of the last interviews with James Baldwin along with Michael Thelwell of University of Massachusetts, and I cite both of them, use both of their interviews at the back of the book. With Trevor and I have been going back and forth for a number of years, including his mother, Helen, and that'll bring the family into focus. Hey, Trevor, let's talk a little bit about, your aunties, and I think invitations have been extended to them, and I'll be surprised if a couple of them show up. That will really highlight the whole afternoon, but I think one of the things about having 3 people sit down, I thought at first about, a keynote address. I don't need to have that. Let's have a conversation. So that's what essentially it is the idea is to have these three individuals: one, a family member; secondly, a so-called biographer; and thirdly, someone who conducted the last interview with James Baldwin. So that's kind of a recipe for kind of an organic thing. Let it flow. Let's see where we go with it. I'm not prepared to say exactly what's going to happen. Let's see.
I'm looking forward to the intimacy that I imagine will be generated by the three of you. And I believe that Quincy Troop will be reading a bit from his Esquire interview, one of the last interviews with Baldwin, which will be very special to hear.
That should be exciting.
Yes.
Yes, I like that.
A question for both of you, but we'll start with you, William. Do you have a favorite Baldwin quote or work that you enjoy returning to?
You know, I enjoy the poetry, the fiction, the plays, but it's the nonfiction that I resonate with the most. And as I think about Harlem and Harlem gentrifying and communities and neighborhoods all over the world that are changing and the displacement that's happening and the lack of community economic development, you know, what resonates me is the fire the next time. And one of the passages is where Baldwin forewarns humanity to deal with the injustices. And he says, God gave Noah the rainbow, sign, no more, fire the next time. That's my, you know, that's my quote, that's my book.
Same question for you.
I think one of the last things that James said, someone asked him about his legacy, and he said that as a writer, first of all, I wanted to be a witness, a good witness, and then subsequently a good writer. So here's this witness and writer, and I think he achieved both those things. He accomplished both of the things that he really dreamed about and struggle for. I think one of the things is we look into Baldwin's life and how it begins to amplify and reflect some of the realities that we're going through in a timeless way, because the traditions that he struggled and continue to be very pervasive, hasn't gone anywhere. And that's why you can pick up, I mean, just the other day, for example, a young graduate student from Stanford University sent me an email, and he had read through the book and stumbled upon the name of June Shagaloff. In his email to me, he's working on his PhD dissertation there. He says, "Sir, who? You don't have a footnote for her. Who was she? Where does that come from?" All of that was a part of James Baldwin. And again, we talk about the relationship he had with a number of princes of powers, the masters of the universe, invited to come and sit with the Attorney General, Robert Kennedy. This is May 24th, 1963. He pulled together a delegation of people to go to sit with Kennedy, including Lena Horne and Lorraine Hansberry, Dr. King's attorney at that time, Clarence Jones, along with Jerome Smith, one of the activists in SNCC. So I included all the names of these people in this delegation. And I also say, hey, he invited this woman, June Shagaloff. And I have a line in the book that says, I wonder how Malcolm would have felt about having this Jewish woman as a part of this black delegation going to see Kennedy. And I think that's what the young student at Stanford University is kind of curious about that. You know, why would he have her there? So he's asking me about her. I said, let's do a deep dive on this because there's no citation. But I think we finally arrived at the point that it was really not, she was not a part of the delegation invited. It was in her apartment in which the whole thing transpired. So I think that's one of the possible answers to it, although she died at 93 years of age a couple of years ago. And in her order, in the obituary, it points out the fact that she was there and observed everything and the exchanges that went on, particularly between Lorraine Hansberry and Kennedy, and that kind of led them to kind of get out of there. The point is that here's James Baldwin interrogating the Attorney General to some extent. That led to that walking out forced Kennedy to get in to reconsider his thinking about the civil rights movement. And shortly thereafter, we have the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That's the summation of that. So you can see here is Baldwin instigating, interrogating, you know, bringing to fore and challenging these here princes of power, these masters of the universe. And you get to say something about the condition of the people in this country. So all of this, you know, is a few other incidents we have with Baldwin, you know, getting together. Certainly the relationship we have with Malcolm X, and even with my latest book, when Baldwin is under surveillance by the CIA and the FBI. That's some very important information in terms of how African American thinkers, you know, are always under pressure by this government.
What made you become this writer, journalist, communicator?
You know, I've given a lot of thought to that, and I think I owe a lot to my surrogate fathers in terms of who I am and what I'm about. And all of my surrogate fathers are gone now. I chose them, they didn't choose me. Gordon Parks to begin with, and I traveled with Gordon to South Africa. Ossie Davis. And Ossie Davis and he worked with me on one of my books, the whole civil rights, We Shall Overcome. And he and Ruby, his wife, provided what's called 2 discs. So it's a narrative. It's rare to put a book together with these 2 CDs. And they did it in one take. It's amazing. And we went up to White Plains and we did it right there. And that connected me with Ossie in even a deeper way of being just a reporter out there standing with all the other, you know, reporters interviewing him. And he always, interestingly enough, whenever I was there, he would say, "Herb, you got a question?" And all the other reporters would look over at me, you know, I mean, these New York Times, Post, Daily News, and suddenly here I'm getting singled out and highlighted. Ossie, Gordon Parks, Percy Ellis Sutton, you know, we know the importance of him. He is another book I did on a Harlem Reader, and Percy did the introduction there for me, connected me with him. And finally, Dr. John Henry Clark, who was my mentor, and I worked with him on a book on the Middle Passage based on the drawings of Tom Fillings. Muriel and Tom Fillings, outstanding activists. For 25 years, he worked on these drawings, capturing the whole transatlantic slave trade. So once he finished with that, we finally had Adele said, "Let's go with it." They said, "Can you get someone to provide the text?" And he called on Dr. Clark to do the text. At that time, Dr. Clark had lost his sight, but not his vision. So he called on me, said, "Herb, can you work with me on this?" He pulled together, William, he did 100 pages. And so they always say, "You got to break this down to just 20 pages. So that was my job, to go in and edit that down and read to him, because he's sightless now, and read to him what I had condensed from that. And that appeared in that book called The Middle Passage. So those are my 4 surrogate fathers who helped shape me, give me the vision, the opportunities, energy, and the blessings that I have today.
So you said that you chose them to be your
I chose
mentor.
them.
You chose
They didn't
them.
choose me.
Herb, thank you. You chose me.
Ah.
You chose me. Maybe you chose me because we're both from Detroit, Michigan. But you've just given me so much inspiration, foundation,
It's a pleasure.
understanding. You know, I just hope to continue to do you proud. Do you proud. Thank you, man.
Oh, brother.
You okay there, Herb? You're not going to cry on me,
Oh,
are you?
yeah, I'm not crying. That's very warm. I love that.
I love that too.
Yeah.
Herb, I can listen to you all day.
Me too.
All day.
I'd like to read a quote that's meaningful to me, thinking about the children in Gaza in particular. This is a quote by James Baldwin. "The children are always ours, every single one of them, all over the globe. And I am beginning to suspect that whoever is incapable of recognizing this may be incapable of morality. As the mother of 2 black children, this quote really touches my heart. And it strikes me right in the heart because I know it to be true. That the children are always ours, every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
God bless the child that has its own.
Yes.
Each one, teach one. We're a community, we're a village, we all raise each other. That's what's missing in the black community today.
I want to thank the 2 of you for sharing.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Mm.
I'm really looking forward to our
Yeah.
celebration and your involvement in it.
And thank you, Emily, for all your hard work.
Yes, indeed.
Could not be done without you.
It's been wonderful to talk about James Baldwin
Oh,
with you
yes.
today. I just want to remind you to please come to our James Baldwin Centennial Celebration on December 5th at City College. And on December 6th, the tour that Professor William Gibbons will be leading around Harlem. We hope to see you there.